My love, are you ready for chapter 12 of your birthday book? Birthday book? I hope so. I'm looking forward to reading it. Load up the dogs! Move it! You there! Be of use or get out of the way! Flora woke to someone shouting and to bright sunlight. A moment later, she was being led toward the ship, the salty air tickling her nose. Bye, Oscar, she called over her shoulder. See you on board. She was so happy to be truly starting her adventure. She could put up with anything, even the sailor's rough tug on her chain around her neck as they went up and into the ship, past rows of empty cages on either side, each with a soft-looking blanket. Which one was hers? Maybe her blanket would have a picture of a pig or a star on it. She kept stopping to look and sniff, but the sailor kept yanking her forward. She hoped he wouldn't shove her into a cage at the end. She enjoyed company, and if she had two friendly neighbors, she might be able to get sled pulling tips from them. They walked past the cage deck, the last cage on deck. Flora tried to turn around. There must be some mistake. But as she protested, the sailor dragged her through a dark doorway. A steep staircase stretched in front of her into the gloom below. This must be the hold. Why was he taking her there? What about her soft blanket? Her cage among the members of the dog team? Flora locked her legs and pulled back with all her strength, but she was forced to hop down each step behind her clanking chain. The shouting and banging from the world above got more and more muffled as she went down. At the bottom of the stairs, the sailor walked a few paces in and clipped her chain to a box. She didn't turn to watch as he clumped back up. She just listened. Then she was alone. Flora blinked. The only light in the hold came from the opening at the top of the stairs. Her chain clinked and her thoughts whirled as she looked for a blanket. There wasn't one. She slumped onto the hardwood floor and put her chain between her front hooves. Something rustled. She lifted her head and softly called, "Hello? Hello?" Nobody answered. The hold was where they put things that they didn't want to think about until they needed them. That was what Oscar had said. Wait a minute. She wasn't a box of tools or a barrel of cheese. How long would it take them to realize she had been chained below by mistake? Oscar and the other sled dogs were up in the fresh air, so why wasn't she? She laid her head back down and tried to imagine what advice Luna would give her. Flora could hear her friend say, "Adventure quickly turns into trouble." Sighing, Flora tried to think more positively until a clatter distracted her. A sailor with a box in his arms pounded down the wooden stairs, and behind him was another sailor and another. A long line of men darkened the doorway, each with a box or a barrel or a sack. She hopped up. She wanted to make it easy for someone to spot her. Each time their burdens slammed onto the floor, Flora jumped. The supplies were rolled or shoved or tossed into place, and then the men banged up the stairs only to return with another load. They were all business and spoke only when they needed to. Captain says leave a path. Captain says stack 'em up only too high. Strap down those barrels. There are rough seas between here and there. Captain says the precious cargo down here will be the difference between life and death once the expedition starts. Precious cargo? Maybe the captain would come down next and inspect his supplies and his pig. He sounded like a person who could sort this out. The parade of men finally ended without a single one of them noticing or speaking to her or scratching her head. The last man disappeared through the doorway and Flora was alone. Was it possible? Could she be the precious cargo? Being put down here had to have something to do with being special. Or maybe it had to do with the training a sled pig needed. Yeah, that was it. She would show the captain her best spirit when he came down and looked things over. Not just boxes and barrels, but his special pig too. That was a quick chapter. That was chapter 12. Let's read chapter 13. When the ship's horn blew, it felt as though the deep sound went inside Flora and rattled around. 2 more blasts came after the first. As soon as the last blast died away, Flora became aware of a low rumble. The ship's engines were running. A slow side-to-side rocking motion started up and sent a thrill through Flora from the tip of her snout down to the end of her tail, despite her awful quarters. They were underway. She looked around at all of the supplies piled against the walls of the ship. Surrounding her was a wide space, a clear walking path to the stairs, and another path through the boxes and barrels. Close by was a food bowl. Flora sniffed it. Spaghetti with tomato sauce and rinds of squash. Not bad, but she'd rather explore her new environment. Unfortunately, Flora couldn't get farther than a few steps before she was stopped short. She walked a few more paces in the other direction until her chain pulled tight. But this time she strained against it, and the chain gave. Behind her, she heard the box she was clipped to grind against the floor. She sat down. This could get tiring. But wait, that was the point. It was supposed to be hard work. Flora had some catching up to do. Stuck in her pen back home, she hadn't trained nearly as much as the farm dogs. Flora pulled at her chain again and heard a satisfying growl from the box scraping over the rough wooden decking. Her leather collar dug into her neck. Good. Sled pulling wasn't supposed to be comfortable. Too bad no one was down here to cheer her on and make sure her technique was right. Instead, a smell wrinkled her nose. It was not a good smell. She tried to shut it out. She focused on the window and the door at the top of the stairs, on that small bit of light, and strained again. Don't give up. Step, pull. Step, step, stop. As soon as Flora sat down, she heard that strange rustling again. Anybody there? She asked. Another rustle, or maybe it was more like a scratching, came from behind a box. So did more of that bad smell. Flora shivered. But this was no time to be afraid like little Alfred. She dragged her box until she could peer into the dark space between cargoes. The floor almost seemed to be moving as if it were alive. Flora looked longingly at the stairs and then turned back. Yikes! She hopped backwards. A big, greasy rat with long, wiry whiskers and a bald patch between his ears had stepped out from behind a box and was sniffing in Flora's direction. Oh my goodness, wait till you see this picture. Look at that rat. I wonder if he's going to be friendly or not. Let's find out. Flora tried to be brave. She tried to remember her rat hunting moves, but suddenly attacking a crumpled paper bag or a dried orange peel didn't seem like enough training. As she watched him creep closer, she worked hard to stop shaking so her chain wouldn't rattle. Then he stood on his hind legs and opened his mouth, showing off his impressive, sharp, yellow teeth. He snapped his mouth shut. Then he oozed in the direction of her food bowl. Flora scampered as far away as possible and sank to her stomach. She could see him slip over the bowl's edge and paddle around while searching out the best morsels. Evidently, he did not care that his fur was becoming soggy with tomato sauce, or that this was not his food. In a moment, he was joined by 2 mean-looking buddies. Chewing and slurping were the only sounds. Flora imagined an ocean of rats watching her from the shadows. She hid her face between her hooves. Once the food in Flora's bowl had been eaten, the rats disappeared. That was good. The light in the top of the stairs was dimming. Night was coming. The rustling in the darkness seemed even louder. Flora shivered at the thought of having to listen to rat sounds all night long. The ship was bucking and pounding along. She could feel the boards underneath her shudder. She needed to think about something cheerful. Hike, she whispered to herself and brought the pictures to mind. The snow was a glittering blanket. Across the folds of white raced Flora, the sled pig. She was galloping beside a frozen lake with a team of a dozen sled dogs. Oscar was in the front. At the end of the line was the sled, brightly painted in a festive blue with white stars for decoration. Onward, called Oscar. Onward, Flora echoed. We're tough, we're brave, and we're a little bit crazy. She leaped and twisted in the air in a crazy little dance before speeding on. Oh, Winnie, be quiet. Even if sleep didn't come, Flora's mind was in a far better place. Hike, she murmured again and again. And that, my love, is the end of chapter 13. Kisses, and here are some for your family. I love you.